Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies that makes us feel seen. I'm your host, Jordan Crucchiola. Anytime we get to sit down with a member of the Maximum Fun family, it's always a treat, and today is no exception. My co-host is Oscar Montoya, one of the hosts of the new Max Fun podcast, Eurovangelists. Oscar is an actor, a dancer, and comedian who you might recognize from the show Minx, produced by friend of this very show, Paul Feig, or from Dix the Musical, where he played a dancing garbage man. Oscar is feeling seen by the character of young Watson from a 1985 film called Young Sherlock Holmes. We are going to get into what that movie is, why it's so important to him, and the nature of identifying with a trusty sidekick. Oscar Montoya, what else do the people need to know about you before we get going here today?
Okay, well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Jordan. Mm-hmm. A thing that you need to know about me, this is very important for this particular episode, for this particular movie,
yes.
Is that I was born in Colombia and raised in Colombia. So I am an immigrant, and I came to this country when I was 12 years old. So that's a fun fact about me. And another fun fact, this is a non sequitur, is that I've never drank ever in my life. So
me neither.
Really?
Never a day, never a drop.
Never a day, never a drop. I want to get that tattooed on my neck right here.
Yeah, mine has been a life accidentally defined by abstinence. Like, it wasn't the plan, but like that very much just like became what it was. And it, like, once I hit college, people usually thought if everybody was drinking, they thought I was drunk. I'm very extroverted.
You're fun without alcohol. It's like you don't need the help. Because there's a lot of people who like sort of need that lubricant in order to tap into that dial to make them keyed into a social event. But like, we don't need that. We're fine.
One of my key sober moments was at a work retreat. I worked at Wired Magazine at the time, so it was based in San Francisco. We had the only time I was ever there where there was like a whole company retreat, whole Wired retreat, to a place. We went to a hotel in Santa Barbara, the Dream Inn. It was wonderful. And one night we did karaoke. One of our editors is deeply passionate about karaoke. And it was like deep into the night. Like, people were having a great time. And this woman from the sales team in New York, who I had never met till that day, came up to me and was like, "Do you want to do a shot with me?" And I was like, "No, but like, you should if you want to." And she was so dejected because she was running around like trying to get all of her friends to do more shots with her. And she was so sure that I was hammered enough to keep drinking that she asked me. And so it just like broke her heart so much because like her friends around her, they were like, "She's tried everyone," because everyone was kind of ready to be done. But she like wanted to sing, so she wanted to be more drunk.
Oh, so
and I was
she needed that liquid courage.
Yeah, and I was like, "Listen, I have a policy of karaoke, actually. If anybody asks me to sing with them, I will, because I want people to be able to enjoy themselves but not feel alone. So I will figure it out when I get up there if I don't know it, but I will sing with you if that's the way that it's going to get you up on the stage." I was a part of a competitive karaoke league in San Francisco for 2 years, 4 seasons.
I'm sorry, huh? Competitive?
Yeah, we will get to Sherlock immediately, but it was at a bar, an Irish soccer bar, and teams would, like, maximum 8 members, had to be balanced by gender, and every week you went head to head with another team.
Serious.
Oh yeah, every week you went head to head with another team, and there were 3 performances: male solo, female solo, and group song. And a panel of 3 judges would score every song on 2, sing it and bring it. Were equally weighted. So you couldn't just have ringers get up there and just belt and beat everybody. You had to have a bring it aspect. We were really known for being really sexually audacious performances, actually. What
was your go-to? What is one of your favorite performances?
One of my, one of my favorites was one of our weirdest, because we had a couple people who are really into kink, so they had a lot of supplies and toys. And so we had a performance of Closer by 9 Inch Nails that are one of our...
Oh my God!
One of our members, Bo, was our Trent Reznor. And my pitch was like, since it's such a dark, like kind of like plotting song, I was like, what if we like tied someone up and just like steadily cut their clothes off of them? And that was like the performance, but in like a really staged way. And they said yes, but they were like, but who's going to do it? I was like, well, since I introduced the idea, like, I'll volunteer to be the person. And
shut up.
Bo tied me up by like in a very professional way. Bo tied me up by my wrists, and we had like a broomstick hold my arms above my head, and then the rest of the team put on robes and pig masks, and over the course of the song, just like slowly cut my clothes off my body, and I had like hot pants and a corset on underneath everything, and that was the performance for Closer.
Okay, wait a second. That is
the room was
iconic.
Agog. No one knew what to expect from that.
That's iconic. That's performance art. That's drag.
But like Bo had the ropes and the stuff, so it was like,
oh my God. Bring it back. Bring back that performance, please, Jordan. People want to see it. People want to see it.
We had a great time. I got to say,
feeling seen, folks. Shot it out. Let Jordan know.
It was really like, I gotta say about Karaoke League, I saw people who over the course of 4 seasons were so timid when they would get up on stage to sing the first time, and by the end of 4 seasons were so confident and were so proud and were such stage presences. It was actually a beautiful experience in a lot of ways.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone was so supportive of each other, just having the best possible time and cheering for each other. It was really magical, actually.
It feels like a confidence camp in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, this was our theater camp.
Yeah. I want that to be a movie.
You're so right. Wow, that's my musical. But I have taken us so far off the beaten path. Please tell us the movie that you've brought for us today, Oscar.
Yes, I have brought in a movie that maybe you've heard of it, maybe you have never even heard of this movie. It is called Young Sherlock Holmes.
I had not.
Most people haven't.
And yet, this is a Barry Levinson directed, Steven Spielberg produced film.
It was definitely buried in pop culture history, but it's so weird because, I saw this in Colombia, which is weird because, like, when you watch stuff overseas, there's so much of this sort of, like, movies that didn't quite make American canon. And, like, it sort of becomes, like, very popularized in other countries. Like, I remember, like, one of my favorite movies ever was Baby's Day Out. And it's a movie that I, like, quote endlessly. I reference that movie all the time. And people look at me like I have, like, 5 heads. They're like, what movie is this? I was like, what? It's Baby's Day Out. Iconic. And it's so big overseas. As a matter of fact, it is huge in India, so big that there is in fact a Baby's Day Out Bollywood remake.
I learned yesterday that there is a Hindi Bollywood remake of The Rock.
Yes.
And man, I need to now watch Baby's Day Out again from here in the States and then watch the Indian version of it, because watching 3-hour The Rock with like slow motion effects and like bullet time fight scenes is like, wow, they took it and ran with it.
I mean, Bollywood films are just so amazing. One of my favorite movies ever, as I watched as an adult, is a Bollywood remake of, get ready for this, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh.
They have a Freddy Krueger Bollywood movie. And there is a character in it. It's so amazing. There's a character in it whose whole deal is that he's obsessed with Michael Jackson.
What?
And that's literally nothing to do with the plot of the movie. But obsessed with Michael Jackson, acts like Michael Jackson, has a Michael Jackson-inspired Bollywood movie. I think they were thinking, like, Thriller, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
And they sort of did that. It's so amazing. Everyone, y'all need to find it. Y'all need to watch it. It's so good.
If it's 3 hours long, I've been going to, I go to a friend's movie night every week that he's been doing for 20 years. And, he does a double feature every weekend.
Whoa.
If this is a 3-hour movie, it might have to be like, okay, it's 3 hours, so it's one movie, but I think we should watch Bollywood Friday the 13th. Wow. Or Bollywood, Nightmare on Elm Street. If it's Freddy, it's Nightmare on Elm Street. Apologies, everybody.
Yes. Put down your pitchforks, people.
So, okay, was young Sherlock then Was this popular among a lot of people you knew, or was this one that you really fastened onto specifically? Was this a Baby's Day Out sensation?
This was something that was very prominent on like Colombian television. So in school we like talked about it like all the time because it was like, yeah, this was like in the 90s. They were like, I just watched it on TV, and it was like the same 4 movies that I guess they got the international rights for, I guess. But it was like,
oh my God, you're right.
That and like Earth Girls Are Easy, and like there were like another. To Wong Fu also was like a movie that was airing all the time.
What a collection!
Young Sherlock Holmes was like very much like, oh, this is like the kids' movie. This is like what the cool kids watched and talked about after school.
Okay.
As I stepped from my carriage, the sight of my new school filled me with fear and apprehension. And yet, I was swept with a wave of curiosity. However, nothing could prepare me for the extraordinary adventure that lay ahead, or the extraordinary individual who would change my life.
Now, being steeped in 2 cultures as you are, can you trace the threads of what about young Sherlock was so resonant for Colombian kids in Colombia? Like, what are, like, you're like, well, there's a thing about, like, this kind of relationship or this kind of dynamic. Like, what was that really caught on for you guys?
I think it was, it literally just felt like a big, like a Goonies, like we love Goonies, we love Monster Squad, and it was very much in that vein. It's a Steven Spielberg produced movie, Barry Levinson directed spectacle. I mean, you had set pieces, you had big action sequences, and the main characters were these kids in this prep school that felt eerily similar now rewatching it, because I have not seen this movie since I've lived in Colombia.
Okay.
So it just felt very similar to like Harry Potter in the sort of like that school system way.
Very.
Like very British. And there was something exotic about that for us, because that's not how our school is.
Yeah.
And like also the crazy ass adventures. And also, to me, there was, I can't speak for my Colombian classmates, but for me, it felt like this amount of like privilege, right? Like, oh my gosh, these kids felt very rich to me, which I think it was just because they were just British. So I was like, oh, they're fancy and they have nice clothes and like they all speak really funny, like, because we're used to watching American films. So when people speak in British, we were like, what the fuck is this even? Like, what? What? So there was a sense of like exoticism there that we were sort of like drooling over, like, oh, cool. But it's just a spectacle. It was like, really cool action sequences.
Well, and so what is it about young Watson that you really connected with? Young Watson is obviously, he's enchanted by Sherlock. Sherlock's a very enchanting, charismatic figure. We meet this Sherlock. He has a sort of love of his life at this school. He's passionate. Like, all the kids are talking at dinner one night about what they want to be when they grow up, and they're like, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be rich, I want to be a doctor. And Sherlock's like, I never want to be alone. And you're like, oh, something terrible is going to happen to him in this movie, because we know Sherlock is a very solitary figure, but for Watson,
I want to enlist in the army. A general. And generals don't make any money.
I would prefer to be an author.
Authors don't make money.
I want to be a barrister.
Barristers make money.
I want to be a doctor.
Nobody asked you.
Sorry.
Holmes, what about you? What do you want to be when you grow up?
I never want to be alone.
And Watson is just like my favorite Watson moment in this movie is when they go to an Egyptian bar in the middle of London and they're asking around about like crimes and this like ancient like totem that they have, and like Sherlock's like mission driven, and Watson is like, do you have any soup? And I was like, this is perfect.
I mean,
Sherlock's
honestly,
like, please, Watson.
literally, to quote the name of this podcast, I felt so seen at that moment. It's like, yes, that's what I would ask if I was at a bar, any bar, because I don't drink. So
yes.
I would ask for soup.
What can I get for you boys? Drink, food, women?
Do you have any soup?
Please.
To me, I've always been drawn to characters that read as smart. Like, I was always someone who was like, I want to be the smart person. I am the guy with the glasses. I had this like resistance towards protagonists, main characters, leader type people, because I never saw myself as that, and I never was that ever. Like I don't like leaders. I was just like, no. I want to be the person who's like the right hand person of the lead. I want to be. To me, there was something really cool about Watson because he was very smart. And to me, I have never, ever seen a movie where, I mean, let's be honest, Watson is the protagonist of this movie. We are watching this movie through the lens of Watson. Watson is the narrator. He's like narrating it as an adult, sort of reminiscing about his childhood with young Sherlock Holmes, because I didn't clock this as a kid, but watching it as an adult, I'm like, they make great lengths to be like, this isn't canonized. This is not part of Sir Conan Arthur Doyle's like fantasy, right? This is like,
they're like, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did such an amazing job. We just wanted to pay homage to this thing. This has nothing to do. We did not talk to him. He did not sanction this, but we're so grateful to him. There's like a preamble and a postscript that's like, just so you know,
which I'm like, whoa.
Don't sue us.
Yeah. And it just felt very much like the very first fan fiction to me, which I really like. It's like, oh, you're just writing this movie is a fan fiction. But to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I have never seen a movie where sort of a beta character, someone who is like very much on the peripheral of a narrative, is sort of the focus of this movie. Like, he is a star. We are led to identify with Watson. And I've never experienced that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this movie feels like it was made for me, for the people, for the nerds who identify with the nerds in movies, the people who identify with the shyer, quieter types, the people who watch the leaders, who watch and support the alpha people in our lives and sort of like live vicariously through them. Like, because here's the thing. Okay, so like when I was in elementary school, I was like a very weird, quiet, shy kid. And I was made fun of a lot. I didn't really talk to people. I had a mood ring. I was known as the mood ring boy in school.
Oh, wow.
Because everything I did was dictated by a mood ring that I had. So depending on the color, that was like what I did. And I just like didn't I was just like stare at this ring forever. And it was because I was terribly shy. Like, I just didn't know how to talk to people. And I was made fun of relentlessly. And at an early age, I was maybe like 6 years old, I realized like, okay, I need to like adapt to my surroundings in order to survive. At that moment, it was dire. At that moment, it was like, okay, I need to like figure out what to do. So I started hanging out with people who I'm like, okay, no one's talking to this person. And it was typically like the bully of the school, the kid who was physically larger, who was just like very angry. And I was like, okay, I want to be friends with that person. And I did. I was like one of the few people who would talk to people like that because like everyone else was scared of them.
You really went for prison rules. Make friends with the biggest guy in the yard.
Absolutely. And it was a way for me to survive. I was like, they're going to eat me up. Either, you know what I mean? Be with them or be beat up, you know? So I made friends with my very first friend, Christian Castro. And he was like, oh my God, someone cares. And we became very good friends. And for me, he was like my protection. So in a way, I was like Watson and he was like Sherlock, where he was very much an alpha. And I was just very much at his side, just sort of like not talking to anyone. I was still living my mood ring fantasy, and I was left alone because I was protected, you know?
Yeah.
So when I saw this movie, I was like, oh my God, it's like, you know, art imitating life in a weird way. Like, I just felt so seen by this movie that it was just like, oh my gosh, if I don't have to do all the dangerous stuff. You know what I mean? And still have an adventure in life. Like, I could just, like, tag around with people who are just, like, very bold, very brave. People like you, Jordan. Like, I would have been in that karaoke group, but I'd be doing backup dancing. You know what I mean? I would never take the mic.
And as I know now, we would have fucking elite backup dancing if that was the case. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm realizing now that like the way you're framing young Sherlock, Saltburn is not dark young Sherlock. Saltburn is not what you are describing right now.
Wait a second.
Very Keegan Jacob Elordi sense of the dynamic here.
You are absolutely on the nose there. Prep school, very British. This
very
intense
British
need to be a part of. Wow.
A sexual height difference between the two male friends. A sexual height difference.
Oh my gosh, copyright sexual height difference, please.
Yeah, very important details.
Because you're right, there was.
That's a Kyle Buchanan special. He's now the projectionist writer for the New York Times, but previously when he worked at Vulture, he was really big on chronicling sexual height differences in movies, i.e. Gwendolyn Christie and Oscar Isaac in The Force Awakens and such.
Wait a second. Wow, that is so true. Like, I never even thought about that factor. Yeah, because, like, Sherlock Holmes is long and lanky.
Yeah.
And Watson, I mean, listen, let's be real. Young, old, teenage, middle-aged Sherlock Holmes. Like, there's something queer about Sherlock Holmes, yes? And there's something queer about Sherlock's relationship with Watson. Do you know what I mean? There is something a little left of center, shall we say, you know?
No doubt.
And maybe that's what I like latched onto too, as like someone who is queer but like didn't know it when I was younger.
That was actually something I was going to ask you about, was like that pattern of queering, like close, like obviously close, like same gender friendships of any like, you know, story of coming of age, but like there is an especially strong queerness of like the male hero companions that like Batman and Robin, Sherlock and Watson, like this is a dynamic that we recognize in, I feel like Harry and Ron wasn't really that thing, but like Luke and Han is like, has notes of that as well. This pairing of like the ascendant beta with like the swaggering alpha and the way they're like dynamic, like that is such a queer narrative. That is such a queer narrative.
It really is, because, and I think I didn't realize it at the time, but now that I'm reflecting and now that we're having this conversation about it, yes, absolutely. That is the truth. And, you know, also I was also obsessed with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers growing up. Like that was my Bible. That was my religion. Yeah. And I always keyed in based on this formula that I have about always latching onto the smart one in a group. I was always obsessed with Billy the Blue Ranger, played by David Yost, who is an icon, my literal hero. I literally met him once, and I do not remember the conversation because I blacked out. I love David Yost. But, you know, David Yost is gay, and, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of influence there in his portrayal of Billy the Blue Ranger. And I latched onto that because he felt different. He felt special. And I think there's also an element of queerness in the way that Watson was acting towards Sherlock, because Watson didn't have a love interest.
No.
His love interest was Sherlock Holmes. Do you know what
absolutely.
I mean?
I think when we get the Benedict Cumberbatch series with Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, I think that they like the Robert Downey Jr. Jude Law thing really leans in that direction too. There's like almost like a quirky queerness about him. Like is Sherlock gay or is he an eccentric kind of thing?
Did you know the Opera House is featuring Don Giovanni? I could easily procure a couple of tickets if you had any cultural inclinations this evening. You have the grand gift of silence, Watson. It makes you quite invaluable as a companion.
But, like, between Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, you really get a prevailing sense of these two as companions. Like, these are life partners. And in many ways, like, Watson is absolutely the love of Sherlock's life. And though Watson is more conventional, there isn't anybody that he has in his life like Sherlock. Even if, you know, the love of his life who might be a woman, like, there is not a person who can occupy a space like the extraordinary Sherlock Holmes.
You have missed this. Admit it. The thrill of the chase, the blood pumping through your veins, just the two of us against the rest of the world.
Absolutely. There's a sense of admiration and like, and also, I mean, I don't know if this is canon because I don't know, Jordan, if you've ever read a Sherlock Holmes novel. I certainly have not. Like,
Never
this
read the
movie
books.
did not inspire me to read anything.
No.
But, like, I don't know. I think the way Sherlock and Watson's relationship is portrayed, in media at least, is that Sherlock Holmes is sort of, like, keyed in, but also misses details of a case, where Watson sort of reminds Sherlock, like, oh, yeah, this thing, right?
Yeah.
So Watson could solve a case by himself. Like, he literally could have a spin-off show and be like Watson, but Watson doesn't want to. Because he wants to be for him, it's always Sherlock and Watson. And I think that also speaks to me. Like, I don't want to do things by myself. I could, but I don't want to. I want to be a part of a team, you know? I want to be a part of, like, and that's always been my case in everything I've done professionally. Like, I was a dancer. I was attracted to modern and contemporary because I've always been drawn to, like, a collective, a group of people choreographing stuff together. You know, I've never really done anything by myself in terms of like choreographing or like doing any dance performances. I've never done solo stuff. Solo stuff freaks me out. And right now, like in comedy, I do a lot of improv comedy. That's very group focused, you know?
Yeah.
So I've been just very team oriented. And I think it stems from this idea of Watson being like, I know I could do it by myself, but I don't want to. And there's something really powerful about that, right? Of like having the tools to do things by yourself, but that choosing to be part of a team.
I align with that 100%. That is absolutely how I function as well. Like, I can go to movies by myself. I go to meals by myself. I go to big concerts by myself. Because sometimes just planning with another person is just too complicated. It's like, I just want to fucking go. But like, I just rather be in the company of other people. I liked writing at Vulture, but digital journalism is a really isolating kind of thing, and you're mostly on your own. Sometimes you collaborate, but otherwise it's like kind of entrepreneurial. And I missed being on a magazine's staff at Wired and like being a component of a greater machine that got a story out the door instead of just being the sort of story process top to bottom. And I just like, I've always thought of myself as like, I don't think I would be immune to being in a cult. I think that could absolutely sweep me up.
Same.
And I think I would be a perfect second in command in a cult.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a cult leader. I'm not going to be one of the general followers.
So you get it, Jordan.
I'm going to be at the right hand of power, being counsel and support and a consigliere. But like, and I think that would be a very comfortable position for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Same. I totally agree. Yeah. Who wants the responsibility of being like the figurehead? That is way too much responsibility for me. Just too much attention. I'm not into that. Let me hide in the shadows. Let me support. Let me, I'll give you some advice, but like you do all the work. You take over. Go ahead. You know.
And I love a spotlight when I want a spotlight, but like my joy comes from, I'm a hype man. I love being a hype man. I love making people feel good. I love juicing people up. Like, that's where my joy comes from. So,
Absolutely.
like, that, like, I've often in, like, friend groups or, like, friend pairings, I, like, am sort of in a capacity of, like, I will be the gas on the fire because I want to make your fire bigger. And that's the thing that makes me most happy.
Listen, we're the Flava Flavs of our group.
Absolutely.
Center, okay? And that's okay. There's nothing... People love Flava Flavs, you know what I mean? So, like, we need a Flava Flav, and we are those people, so...
It's time for a quick break. Then I'll be right back with Oscar Montoya. And at the very end, I will have one quick thing before I go about a little deluge of good horror movies that are coming down the pipe that I think we should all be excited about together.
Have you ever wanted to know the sad lore behind Chuck E. Cheese's love of birthday parties?
Or my Saturday mornings are reserved for cartoons?
Or have you wanted to know how beloved virtual pet site Neopets fell into the hands of Scientologists?
Or how a former Mattel employee managed to grow Sega into a video game powerhouse?
Join us, hosts Austin and Brenda, and learn all of these things and more at Secret Histories of Nerd Mysteries, now on Maximum Fun.
The following are real reenactments of pretend emergency calls.
911. My husband! It's my husband! Calm down, please. What about your husband? He loads the dishwasher wrong. Please help! Please help me! Where are you now, ma'am? At the kitchen table. I was with my dad. He mispronounced his words intentionally.
There are plenty of podcasts on the hunt for justice, but only one podcast has the courage to take on the silly crimes. Judge John Hodgman, the only true crime podcast that won't leave you feeling sad and bad and scared for once. Only on MaximumFun.org.
Okay, Jordan, I do want to ask you a question.
Please.
Young Sherlock Holmes, you've never seen it before. Before watching this movie, what did you think the movie was going to be? And I want to know what your take on the movie is. Like, did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Like, what were your thoughts?
I really liked it. It was a page turner. I was surprised at it. It surprised me that it was his and I became the Joker. Like, this is how I expected to find kind of like the savant, antisocial, alienating all the other kids, but focused on his work. But he's warm and he has relationships with mentors that he values and he has this girl that he loves.
My game, Holmes. Now, gentlemen, Mr. Holmes lost because of one important factor. His emotions took over. He ignored discipline. Never replace discipline with emotion. Well played, Holmes.
And so when I started seeing that it was building up with that, I was worried for him because I was like, oh no, we're in store for heartbreak for Sherlock, aren't we? Because if this is what gets us from point A to point B, and B is everything else that we know canonically about Sherlock, I was like, oh man, this guy's going to be in for some wounds that he's never going to go to therapy and he's never going to deal with, and he's going to shut the world out. And it also, what I thought was really sweet about it was the aspect of because we see him, he has that moment where once everything's gone bad, he's like, I'll live the rest of my life alone. It really cements the role that Watson does play in his life, because Watson becomes the exception of intimacy of everything else that he sort of forsakes in his entire life to be just a case cracker, except Watson. And it starts with this little who looks like a lesbian Harry Potter. And that is the sweetest thing.
You are not wrong.
Just with his little soft British voice. Just a little girl. So cute.
There's a distinct stain of yellow custard on your lapel. That particular color of custard is used in the making of custard tarts. And, your shape convinced me that you've eaten many of them before.
There's no need to be rude.
Come on, we haven't got all day.
Well, hang on, where are we going?
You wouldn't want to miss chemistry class, would you?
I gotta say, there is something about my narrative in terms of, I have always been drawn to male-identifying characters that read lesbian.
A great category.
It's a great category, and I feel like I don't know. There's something I identify with that. I'm like, yes, a soft lesbian boy, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's me. That's part of my world. You know what I mean?
Well, I have
but you're totally right. I never even thought about this before, because when Sherlock Holmes said my biggest fear is being alone, it's well, isn't that part of your gig? Isn't that part of your vibe, is that you're alone and brooding and sad all the time? But the movie doesn't do that. The movie's no. Listen, we're not about that. We're here to drop the seed about later, maybe in the sequel, because this movie did very much telegraph that there was a sequel happening.
I wish we got one. I wish we had a sequel.
No one watched it. Yeah, because it just didn't do well, I guess. But I like that the movie was, this is about three people who are best buddies and they're just going to have an adventure together.
Yeah.
And that's great.
And I like the emphasis on adventure. I thought that was really like you said, like that Goonies feeling of a movie. Like the idea of like Goonies is far too ragtag motley crew for British things. Like it has to be like Hogwarts Light kind of situation. It's a prep school and it's made of stone. Like no, like a British child Goonies has to be in like a hall of academia where there are headmasters. It can't be just like shit-kicking children from Astoria, Oregon who are like digging around in tunnels. That doesn't work.
Yeah, they're British still, you know. They still have some
they're still
decorum
English
about them. Yeah.
I also love like throughout it, like I kept having to like recalibrate because like the British humor sensibility is just like the amount of times like Sherlock just insults Watson in the way that like it felt normal because it was British, and also like we get that vibe of Sherlock, but at the same time he's like, "Oh, Watson, you're such an idiot." Like
I know.
Like, oh, well, that's just their way. But like, oh, how could you be so stupid, Watson? And he says it like it's like a loving.
It's their love language.
It's their love language. It's like, oh God, that's gonna give him a compliment. No wonder he's in love with Sherlock. He's completely beholden to this man who shaped his way of loving through like mild abuse.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes has read The Pickup Artist and is using some of the negging tactics on that.
Negging Watson.
What have I found?
Only the three of us know that I'm here.
Someone miss you leaving or coming in.
I'll take my chances.
But you'll need food, supplies. Me? I can't.
You can run errands for me, work as my assistant.
But I might get caught, and that would mean trouble.
Trouble? You would let trouble ruin an opportunity for adventure?
I can't afford to jeopardize my medical career.
Weasel.
I'm not a weasel. I am practical.
Weasels are practical. And I imagined you courageous, stout of heart.
I am courageous. And I'm stout of heart. It's just that... All right, I'll do it.
Thank you, Watson.
I love the arc of like this, like you attaching to this, and you said like part of the appeal of it growing up in Colombia and this extremely like buttoned up British piece of fiction and like the exoticism of that and that being compelling. And now you have an entire podcast called Eurovangelist dedicated
oh my God, you're right.
to evangelizing one of the most like European is like a weird thing to say because there are many nations within Europe, obviously, but like the extremely deeply like European Union at this point custom of engaging in inter-country battle through song.
Yeah, and performance. Listen, it's no different than your competitive karaoke.
Hearing you talk about it on the podcast, that's what it sounds like. Hearing you talk about it on the podcast, that is what it sounds like. I was like, oh my God, this is Karaoke League.
Jordan, I'm telling you, listen, if you want to compete in Eurovision, San Remo, the tiny little country of San Remo allows people not from San Remo to apply for Eurovision. So listen, if you have a song cooking in your brain, write it down and get the crew together and compete in Eurovision.
I will be the actual, like, I will be the real, like the come up story of like Rachel McAdams and Will Ferrell in like the Eurovision Song of Fire story.
Absolutely.
I will be that, like I will have my Husavik, and this is how I win.
Yes.
I was so pleased
exactly.
in the first episode of the Eurovangelist pod. I was so pleased to hear you guys start talking about Melody Festival because my wife is Swedish. And so I have lately been hearing about Melody Festival. So when you guys started talking about it, it was a week ago that I was having this conversation with her and a few of her friends about how and one of her friends, he's very proud of how many times Sweden has won Eurovision. And then you guys started talking about it, tied for most all time with Ireland. I was like, this is a part of my life now.
Oh my God. So you get it, right? Like Eurovision is culture, especially European culture. Absolutely. It's just part of the lexicon. It's sort of like their version of the Super Bowl. It's like the Super Bowl is unavoidable in American culture. It's just That's it. It's people gather around, people pregame, people have events associated to the Super Bowl. We're just replacing football with singing and dancing and costumes and performance and glitz and glamour. That's it.
And it seems like it's like, okay, guys, like the 20th century New England Patriots are Ireland and Sweden of Eurovision.
That part.
Like they are the Yankees, they're the Celtics, Lakers. Like these are the figures, it seems like, that these two countries are in Eurovision.
Yes. Now, Jordan, let me ask you, what is a sports team that was like really good back in the day, but now is not anymore?
I was, when you were talking about, actually in the episode where you're talking about like the reign of Ireland in the 90s, I was like, oh, they're the Bulls. They're the Jordan Bulls of the 90s. Like just cleaning house with Michael Jordan, getting the 6 rings. I was like, that's what they are. Ireland is the 90s Chicago Bulls of Eurovision. And it really feels like it's a legacy that I would imagine they're clamoring to get back to reclaim.
Absolutely. Yeah, they haven't won since 96, I believe. So it's been a minute. And, I'll be very honest. We found out what their song is. It's an artist named Bambi Thug.
Whoa.
And do I think they have what it takes to win this year? If you ask me, my personal take is absolutely not. But, we'll see. Uh-huh. But that's the magic of Eurovision. It's like you just never know. You just never know who's going to take it.
I really think that like we need to have a united vision where it is like I think the states need to fight it out in song. Like I think like people need to. Our divisions are such that we need to fucking get on stage and have this out in song.
Well, not for nothing, but Jordan, we did. We had an American Song Contest that was released 2 years ago, hosted by Kelly Clarkson and Snoop Dogg.
That's right.
And it was an absolute bomb. No one cared. Where all 50 states competed with their songs, and no one watched it. I haven't watched it.
Wow.
I don't care.
That's just so interesting to me because it feels like people will watch anything. It feels like people will watch they'll watch The Masked Singer at an import show.
Absolutely.
And so The Voice, I wonder why this
American Idol
singing show didn't we watch singing shows. It's not well, nobody will watch people sing on television. That's so because now that you say the hosts, I totally remember that.
Yeah. It was
this
just a blip in American culture, and that was it. So to me, there's something so interesting about the psyche, the American psyche, that won't get on board with a song contest, but European culture is all about it. It's what is that?
I wonder if Americans would watch it if it became a global vision, and we could kick the asses of other countries. I wonder if America would be oh, I'm going to tune in to watch us beat the shit out of Azerbaijan.
If the U.S. was a part of the EBU, the European Broadcast Union, and competed in Eurovision, like Australia does, because Australia isn't obviously part of Europe, but they are part of the EBU, and they compete in Eurovision. If the U.S. were allowed to be in Eurovision, it would take America by storm. America would be so into it. Maybe a little too aggressive into it, but 100%. If they're talking about defeating other countries, you know that we'd be all up on it.
It would somehow become a cause of Marjorie Taylor Greene, And it would be well, this was fun until fucking Ted Cruz started podcasting about it.
Yes. Oh, not the Republicans taking everything fun and ruining it.
You know what? Maybe our way in, maybe America becomes the shadow competitor via San Remo. Maybe that's it. America become we are the shadow boxing figure in Eurovision because we always just compete on behalf of San Remo.
Well, Jordan, it's sounding like you want to join Eurovision and compete under San Remo. But as a matter of fact, 2 years ago, San Remo sent an artist called Sanit into the song contest, but Sanit invited a little-known artist called Flo Rida, and they competed. So people were like a huge American artist in Eurovision, and they did okay. But part of the reason why they didn't do great, because I thought the song was really fun and people like that song, is that they didn't like an American in Eurovision Song Contest. They were like, no, this is not for you. This is for us.
That makes so much sense. And they have the right. They have the right. That is so fair. Wow. We would make Sanremo the permanent last place finisher in Eurovision. Oh my God, I can't believe that throwing fucking Flo Rida in there. Like, what is that?
Of all people, I know. They're like, who do we get? Who's hot in the U.S.? Oh yeah, the guy who did the Timber song.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess like my wrapping up question would be then, have you honed your like bespectacled, smart hype man like role into its like finest edge that you feel like is serving you best at this point? Do you feel like that is like, I am Watson and I could solve my own cases, but this is not what I'm choosing to do? Do you feel like you have arrived at that self-determination of a John Watson?
You know, I feel like that's a great question. And I feel like my whole life has led to live that sort of life thanks to this movie. And I feel like I have lived that life pretty authentically. Like, for example, every project that has brought me so much joy, for example, Eurovangelists, like I had a podcast called Inside the Disney Vault where I watched every single Disney animated movie in chronological order. Everything that I've done, every podcast that I've been a part of, every project that I've taken on has always been collaborative. I have never launched anything solo.
Yeah.
Because not that I can't do it. Like, I probably could launch a solo thing, but it just doesn't bring me joy. It doesn't bring me joy in the sense that I like am talking about things that I love with my friends, that we can have a discourse about it, that I can look at someone and be like, yeah, you're the shit. You're amazing. Like, let's do this together, you know? I feel like I have come, you know, I'm wearing glasses. You know, I didn't wear glasses when I was a kid. You know, I'm wearing glasses now because I'm blind as a bat now. So I think I am embodying the Watson. I feel like if my younger self could see me now, I would be like, oh my gosh, look at this mood ring boy. He's turned into the person that I wanted to be all along. And I think that I've come as my own, as my social friends like hype person. And I love that.
You know what they say, like, but it's the whole like behind every good man is like a great woman. Behind every good dominant force out there is a great Jordan Crucchiola and Oscar Montoya fanning the flames to make them burn brighter. And we
standing ovation.
We are. I am a proud Hufflepuff in this world, to take it to more British metaphor. And I couldn't be prouder of us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You know, listen, if there's a takeaway here, listeners, just show some love to your supportive smart friend.
That's
you know what I mean? Just like take a moment to be like, you know what? I see you. You've been there for me. You've given me a lot of the spotlight, and I thank you. Do that. Do that for your smart friend.
Oscar, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your time. And thank you for being a Eurovangelist on Maximum Fun. You have sold me, and I know speaking producer Marissa, she's like, I think I'm going to keep listening to that show. I'm like, yeah, Yay! I think we're in now.
Good. See, you're part of it. We've done it. We've brought you to the cult of Eurovision.
The tent is big and warm, everybody. The tent is big and warm.
A very big thank you to Oscar Montoya. Perhaps my double? Have you seen us in the same room at the same time? I think not. You can listen to Eurovangelists anywhere you get your podcasts, and if you have even the slightest inkling to know more about the Eurovision Song Contest, you really, sincerely should give it a listen. They will get you up to speed on like a half a century of Eurovision shockingly fast, and we will put a link to that in the show notes. And then if you want to check out Young Sherlock Holmes, it's currently streaming on Paramount Plus and Prime. And now that one quick thing before I go, a little shout out to the new horror movies we have coming up on the horizon. I feel like we're in this interesting time in horror in terms of the discourse around it, where I do think the sort of mainstream conversational bubble around the genre that really expanded with the sort of tandem rising tide lifting all boats of indie art house and studio films going big with the arrival of movies like It Follows, The Witch, The Babadook, Get Out, all arriving at the same time. That really swelled for a number of years, and I feel like we've come to this place now where there are just as many good horror movies. They are just as good as the movies that came out at the peak of that bubble. But I feel like I don't know, maybe people have just sort of moved on from talking about it as much. I got a whole theory on it. I won't get into the weeds of it now, but this does not mean just because the conversation seems to have shifted sort of down a few degrees that there are not just as many fantastic horror movies coming out now as there ever have been. For example, obviously we just had Lisa Frankenstein, which you guys know I really enjoyed. There's Imaginary, some gateway horror coming up from Blumhouse that I'm actually really excited about. There's a Nunsploitation movie starring Sydney Sweeney. Just wanted to repeat that to make sure you got it. Teaming up again with her Voyeurs director, Michael Moen. And if you guys want a zany erotic thriller that really harkens back to the 90s, you should check that out. After seeing a trailer on a big screen for A Quiet Place Day 1, starring Lupita Nyong'o, I got a wave of anticipation about that. I'm super excited about it. Huge bonus to put Lupita Nyong'o at the front of anything. There's a new M. Night Shyamalan with The Watchers, starring Dakota Fanning. We have got the first Omen coming up, and prequels to long-standing legacy franchises can be a bit dicey, but let's see what they've got with The Demon Child coming up. Abigail from the Radio Silence Collective, they've stepped away from the Scream franchise, and now they're doing another, cool house of horror, as, a la Ready or Not, perhaps, with a little vampire ballerina girl, and that sounds exciting. There's a Beetlejuice movie starring Jenna Ortega, and we show up for Jenna Ortega on this podcast. If you didn't see Miller's Girl yet, you've still got some homework to do. And then there's Tarot, which, feels like it kind of could be an IP movie of the week, like a gimmick cashing in thing. But honestly, the trailer played before a movie I went and saw recently, and I felt like I was watching a 13 Ghosts preview, and it looked really fun and really exciting. There's also Cuckoo from the director of Lose, starring Hunter Schafer, the Hunter Schafer. This is a lot to get excited about, you guys. So, and hey, I do consider Civil War, the upcoming A24 movie about the ode to realistic possibility of America fracturing into a hot civil war. I'm going to call that horror because I lose sleep about it somewhat regularly. And it makes me want to cry and throw up. Literal screaming, crying, and throwing up, but not in a Stan way, in a dread way. So yeah, that's just what I could rattle off right now. That's not looking toward the all long game rest of 2024. That's first half of the year, maybe first quarter of the year. So let's get on our horses and ride to some horror movies together. And that is the victorious end of our show. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FeelingSeenPod, or send us an email at feelingseen@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm Jorcrew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported directly by you.